It's an issue when one side does it, but not when the other does it.
Well, that's because the Democrats aren't being funded by foreign adversaries. They're not foreign adversaries. Some of these words he's saying, I'm not sure if they're actual words.
Going through into the... Well, lads, it appears that the intel agencies very well may have come to a realization that they might not have another opportunity to take a shot at Donald Trump. Of course, I'm just kidding, YouTube. Half kidding, but nonetheless, I digress. What I find most interesting about what we see now as we march headlong towards the 2024 election, as we stammer and stumble our way towards November. Well, we're going to see some new propaganda unfurl, but what we're most certainly going to see is something that's tried and true, tested, proven to be efficient and valuable in the moment for whipping people up into an emotional frenzy, activating them so that they can then turn their crosshairs upon whoever it is that the corporate press demands they aim upon, and then when they yell fire, they will volley all of their nonsense in that exact direction. And what we see is that talking point, that proven and tested, tried and true methodology of conditioning people, well, it's Russiagate 2.0. That's exactly what we're about to see unfurl. Of course, as we know with Russiagate...
Why is it that, like, what evidence would you have to see? What evidence would you have to see? Like, Lauren Chin, the ringleader of the Tenet Media thing, the one who owned Tenet Media, like, she hasn't made a statement. She might be under arrest, like, for violating FARA. What evidence do you need to see? Nobody in the that was implicated, not explicitly named in the indictment, was contests anything that was said in the indictment. They just said that they were the victims of the crimes. They said that they, like, yeah, this happened. So why are we saying that this is Russiagate 2 when it seems like even the people who are implicated in it say that, yeah, it happened?
Gate 1.0, complete and utter nonsense, claiming Donald Trump got into American politics by the fact of the Kremlin and Russian involvement, and the only reason he was able to actually get elected was because the Russians hacked our elections. Absolutely and completely ridiculous, proven so by the Mueller report, but realistically, I would argue anyone who had their head screwed on in the moment realized this was complete and utter bullshit. But of course, that doesn't matter. It was an efficient talking point that we could beat people over the head with and activate them. So that's exactly what we're going to do once again, as we see with the Biden administration now coming forward, claiming that they're going to be tackling Russian propaganda and disinformation surrounding what's going on as we walk towards the 2024 election. Isn't that just something? And doing this, we see that they're going to have to stratify a little bit more and, let's say, cast a bit more of a nebulous web. So now we see that right-wing influencers are also apparently being cast as nothing more than Russian puppets once again, with Tenet Media being an organization run by people like Tim Pool, Dave Rubin, Lauren Chen, Benny Johnson, and apparently this organization now being accused of being nothing more than a Russian-funded propaganda outlet.
Breaking news, the Biden administration taking a series of actions to target what they allege are attempts by Russian-backed actors to manipulate public opinion here in the U.S. ahead of the presidential election, according to two senior U.S. officials. Joining us now is NBC's Ken Delanian. Ken, what more have we learned?
Jose, this is being described by our sources as a whole-of-government action designed to target Russian propaganda and disinformation aimed at interfering in the 2024 election. It is said to include sanctions by the Treasury Department, law enforcement action by the Justice Department, and one of the focuses is on RT, formerly known as Russia Today, that network of Russian government-funded English-language websites and television platforms that was flagged all the way back in 2017 by the U.S. intelligence community as a vehicle for Russian disinformation and election interference. And at that time, the Justice Department required RT to register as a foreign agent. It remains to be seen exactly what actions the U.S. will take against RT today, but this does appear to represent an escalation in the efforts to try to purge the system of Russian propaganda and disinformation. What's interesting is that, look, the U.S. has been saying all along that not only Russia, but Iran and China, but particularly Russia, has been consistently trying to manipulate American public opinion with disinformation on social media platforms, use of fake accounts, and through RT, through its state-sponsored platforms, as they did in 2016. The difference now is that there are mechanisms in place, particularly on the social media platforms, to try to stop and flag fake accounts before the influence operations spread too widely. So it remains to be seen what impact this Russian disinformation is having. But nonetheless, this is a stance by the Biden administration to say if you're violating U.S. laws and policies, we're going to come after you. Attorney General Merrick Garland is expected to chair a meeting.
Did this put an entire MSNBC segment in his... He put like an entire MSNBC segment in his video. Okay,
Of the
I thought that
government's election.
I got worried for a second because I thought that maybe I accidentally hit next video, but no, this is just still his video.
Task force today, this afternoon, with FBI Director Chris Wray.
Scroll specifically for the charts. All of Trump's Russiagate ties in 7 charts. Met twice with the Russian ambassador to the U.S. That's not good. Secretary of State, former ExxonMobil CEO, did business with Rosneft and Gazprom. Michael Flynn, former Trump National Security Advisor. See more about him. Oh, he has a direct tie to Putin, it looks like. Or maybe not. Was paid by RT. Michael Flynn, as the director of Defense Intelligence Agency in 2013, visited headquarters of GRU. Well, I mean, if he's actually... like, there's damning things in here, but, like, this is something that he would be doing in his official capacity. This right here is not great, but... And this one also is not great. But, like, including this one in there, I'm not sure about that. Trump and Putin via campaign advisors. This is something I'd be way more interested in if I had my ADD medicine. But let's keep watching this, okay?
And other officials, and he may have public comments to make about this effort at that time, Jose.
You know what the most fascinating part about all of this is? That it's going to be the government, as in the Biden administration and the DOJ, that get to decide what is Russian propaganda and disinformation. So what's most interesting to me specifically about this is the idea of how right-wing influencers, as in like specifically quote-unquote social media stars, as they say, which realistically they're more news commentariat, but nonetheless, of course, we have to go ahead and find any way to glamorize what we can within the media. DOJ alleges Russia-funded U.S. media company linked to right-wing social media stars, and the company in question would be that of Tenet Media that was helmed by Benny Johnson, Lauren Chen, wait for it, Tim Pool, and Dave Rubin, which is something that I find quite fascinating because they've come out and claimed that if this actually was the case and this was funded by Russian state media specifically, or the Russian government as in the Kremlin itself, that this was something they were unaware of. And the thing is, I haven't actually seen any like pro-Russia talking points. I will admit Tim Pool gets a little emotionally activated when he talks about Ukraine, and it's a bit much, and it's why I don't listen to him talk about these things anymore, because he just gets so emotionally activated. The right has become really bad about this, just like the left has, which has become absolutely annoying, but nonetheless, I digress. Let's jump in. Here we see the unnamed Tennessee-based company that the Justice Department alleges was being funded by Russian operatives working as part of a Kremlin-orchestrated influence operation targeting the 2024 U.S. election is Tenet Media, which is linked to right-wing commentators with millions of subscribers on YouTube and other social media platforms, according to a U.S. official briefed on the matter. Okay, let's go ahead and just pause for just a second and address this. There are so many other people who are of the news commentariat that cover nothing more than all of the spins that the left and the progressives and Democrats need to try and go ahead and rewarp every single thing that the reader is going through into the favor of the Democrats. Effectively,
what did you just say?
Okay, leaders with million operation targeting the 2024 U.S. election is Tenet Media, which is linked to right-wing commentators with millions of subscribers on YouTube and other social media platforms, according to a U.S. official briefed on the matter. Okay, let's go ahead and just pause for just a second and address this. There are so many other people who are of the news commentariat that cover nothing more than all of the spins that the left and the progressives and Democrats need to try and go ahead and rewarp every single thing that the reader is going through into the favor of the Democrats.
Sorry, one last time, because I was concentrating on the game.
And address this. There are so many other people who are of the news commentariat that cover nothing more than all of the spins that the left and the progressives and Democrats need to try and go ahead and rewarp every single thing that the reader is going through into the favor of the Democrats, effectively operating as apparatchiks for these people, many of the times also funded by huge organizations.
Some of these words he's saying, I'm not sure if they're actual words.
Is going through into the favor of the Democrats, effectively operating as apparatchiks for these people, many of the Democrats effectively operating as apparatchiks for these people, many of the times also funded by huge organizations, which are lobbying arms for the Democrat Party, but they don't actually address that. No, it's an issue when one side does it. But
okay, I'm so confused what the his point is here. Let me listen.
No Russia talking points. I will admit Tim Pool gets a little emotionally activated when he talks about Ukraine, and it's a bit much, and it's why I don't listen to him talk about these things anymore, because he just gets so emotionally activated. The right has become really bad about this, just like the left has, which has become absolutely annoying, but nonetheless, I digress. Let's jump in. Here we see the unnamed Tennessee-based company that the Justice Department alleges was being funded by Russian operatives working as part of a Kremlin-orchestrated influence operation targeting the 2024 U.S. election is Tenet Media, which is linked to right-wing commentators with millions of subscribers on YouTube and other social media platforms, according to a U.S. official briefed on the matter. Okay, let's go ahead and just pause for just a second and address this. There are so many other people who are of the news commentariat that cover nothing more than all of the spins that the left and the progressives and Democrats need to try and go ahead and rewarp every single thing that the reader is going through into the favor of the Democrats, effectively operating as apparatchiks for these people, many of the times also funded by huge organizations.
They're not foreign adversaries being funded. Do you realize that the part that's bad is the fact that they're foreign adversaries? Apparatchiks, historical, a member of a Communist Party apparatus, or apparat. Interesting. I did notice how he was using commentariat, like, I know that that's very Soviet style, like, naming convention. I just never heard apparatchiks.
Which are lobbying arms for the Democrat Party.
Democratic Party is not a foreign agent.
But they don't actually address that. No, it's an issue when one side does it, but not when the other does it.
Well, that's because the Democrats aren't being funded by foreign adversaries. They're not foreign adversaries. Is this?
And this isn't a defense of the fact of Russia funding American media outlets. My point is simply what I stated. Here we see
your point is that some people get funded by Americans and some people get funded by foreign adversaries, and these are somehow exactly the same?
Indictment unsealed in New York's Southern District accused 2 employees of RT, the Kremlin's media arm, of funneling nearly $10 million to an unidentified company described only as Company One in court documents. Here we see CNN has independently confirmed that Company One is Tenet Media, which is a platform for independent content creators. It is self-described as a network of heterodox commentators that focus on Western political and cultural issues, according to its website, which matches language contained in the newly unsealed indictment. The goal of the operation, according to the prosecutors, was to fuel pro-Russian narratives, in part by pushing content and news articles favoring Republican presidential nominee Donald Trump and others who the Kremlin deemed to be friendlier to its interest. The indictment also says that Company One's website identifies 6 commentators. Among the commentators listed on Tenet Media's website are right-wing personalities Benny Johnson and Tim Pool. Both have millions of subscribers on YouTube and other social media platforms. Pool interviewed Trump on his podcast in May, which he did indeed do. In separate statements released Wednesday, Johnson and Pool said that they were victims of the alleged scheme and said they maintained editorial control of the content that they had created, which, if you were familiar with either of these gentlemen, it did seem like they had full editorial control of everything they've been creating. It doesn't seem like they've been specifically curating their message. Although the fact of audience capture as well as revenue capture from the fact of your donors is a major thing to consider, so it's understandable if people would be looking at these individuals with an incredibly skeptical eye now.
And also the fact that, like, if you're being paid millions of dollars from a foreign adversary to keep pushing the same narrative that you have been pushing, right, that just means that you're a useful idiot for the foreign adversary. Like, it should be embarrassing. It should be embarrassing that these people, it's not just embarrassing that they got caught taking money from Russia. It should be embarrassing that Russia thought that they were stupid enough, like useful idiots, that they could pay them millions of dollars. And number one, they wouldn't question the source. Number two, that their talking points might be beneficial to our adversaries. That our adversaries think that it's a good thing when the United States is, voting against the Ukraine war, voting against helping the Ukrainians. Apparatchik? I have never heard that term before in my entire life, but
Here we see we are disturbed by the allegations in today's indictment, which make clear that myself and other influencers were victim in this alleged scheme, Johnson wrote in this post on X. So we can go ahead and jump to that real quick. Here you can actually see that post. Benny saying a statement on the leaked DOJ indictment today. A year ago, a media startup pitched my company to provide content as an independent contractor. Our lawyer negotiated a standard arm's length deal, which was later terminated. We are disturbed by the allegations in today's indictment, which make it clear that myself and other influencers were victims in this alleged scheme. My lawyers will handle anyone who suggests or states otherwise. Alrighty, jumping back to it. The thing that I think is most interesting here is, were these people unwitting actors, as we see so many people that operate as mouthpieces for the establishment that are just propelling nothing more than the progressive talking points into the ether? Or did they do so knowingly and were acting as propagandists? I'm not sure, but all I know is I look at every single one of these people that are reporting the news with an incredibly skeptical eye, because the fact is that we see things like audience capture, which is incredibly dangerous and so many people are susceptible to, completely distorting the nature of how it is that they have covered things over time, which, me being someone who has watched these people for quite some time, it is very apparent in the nature of how they have subtly shifted their content, and I do not believe that was due to the fact of the revenue that they were being provided, but specifically because of how their audience was shifting, and that the thing is, your views going up ends up incentivizing what you're doing, and we all know that people simply run off of base level incentive structures. A little further down we see, should these allegations prove true, I as well as other personalities and commentators would be deceived and our victims, Pool said on X. The show is produced in its entirety by our local team without input from anyone external to the company, he added. Which, that is true. Tim Pool has been producing his show in-house for ages. So let's go ahead now actually jump into what Tim Pool had to say. Here we can see my statement regarding allegations in the leaked DOJ indictment. Should these allegations prove true, I as well as the other personalities and commentators were deceived and are victims. I cannot speak for anyone else at the company as to what they do or what they are instructed. The Culture War podcast was licensed by Tenet Media. It existed well before any license agreement with Tenet, and it will continue to exist after any such agreement expires. The only change with the agreement was that the location of the live broadcast be moved to Tenet's YouTube channel. Never at any point did anyone other than I have full editorial control of the show and the contents of the show that are often very apolitical. Examples include discussing spirituality, dating, and video games. This show is produced in its entirety by our local team without input from anyone external to the company. TCW is a separate company not associated with Timcast.com or other properties. It exists solely for the production of the Culture War podcast. That being said, we still do not know what is true, as these are only allegations. Putin is a scumbag, Russia sucks donkey balls, and to the journalists who wish to jump the gun, create their own narrative, or lie about what is currently going on, you can eat my Irish ass. And there you have the statement from Tim Pool as well as Benny Johnson, and you would consider that if Tim Pool was actually someone that was being paid by the Russians in the Kremlin, that he wouldn't be able to just badmouth Vladimir Putin like that. But nonetheless, if that was the case, this could also be a subversive way to make sure that you're skating around any of those allegations because you're trying to go ahead and clear favor for you. I don't actually believe that to be the case, but alas, we have to leave every single door open, even if it seems like it's the most ridiculous. So what I find so interesting specifically about that, nonetheless, if that was by the Russians in the Kremlin, that he wouldn't be able to just bat donkey balls into the journalists who wish to jump the gun, create their own narrative, or lie about what is currently going on, you can eat my Irish ass. And there you have the statement from Tim Pool as well as Benny Johnson, and you would consider that if Tim Pool was actually someone that was being paid by the Russians in the Kremlin, that he wouldn't be able to just badmouth Vladimir Putin like that. But nonetheless, if that was the case, this could also be a subversive way to make sure that...
Why would that be the case? Because he doesn't like it when people say mean things about him, or like they're doing what they want them to do, which is spread misinformation and bad, bad narratives in the United States. That's what they want him to do, and that's what he was doing. If he says Putin every once in a while, I don't think Putin's feelings are going to get hurt.
That you're skating around any of those allegations because you're trying to go ahead and clear favor for you. I don't actually believe that to be the case, but alas, we have to leave every single door open, even if it seems like it's the most ridiculous. So what I find so interesting specifically about that, which I was taken aback by when I read the last of it, Tim says, "You can eat my Irish ass." I thought Tim was Korean. I had no idea it had any bit of Irish in it. Nonetheless, that doesn't matter. I digress. Let's get back to this article from CNN. On Wednesday, the Biden administration announced a sweeping set of actions to tackle a major Russian government-backed effort to influence the 2024 U.S. presidential election, including sanctions on 10 individuals and entities and the seizure of 32 internet domains. Okay. So, if you're curious, you would like to read the entirety of the indictment itself, right here, link in the description down below, you will be able to go find it, read the full federal indictment accusing Russians of funding divisive online content in the U.S. And well, the thing that you would have to realize is that it wouldn't just be the Russians. Our own intel agencies do this with bot farms in our own country to distort the nature of the information that American citizens are receiving from American news sources. So if you think that other countries wouldn't do this, or we wouldn't do this in other countries, you're absolutely insane. Jumping back to it. At Russian President Vladimir Putin's direction, 3 Russian companies used fake profiles to promote false narratives on social media, U.S. Deputy Attorney General Lisa Monaco said in a statement. Internal documents produced by one of those Russian companies show one of the goals of the propaganda effort was to boost the candidacy of Trump, or whoever emerged as the Republican nominee for president, according to an FBI affidavit. Taken together with the indictment of the RT employees, the actions represent the Biden administration's most significant public response yet to alleged Russian influence operations targeting American voters. After the U.S. accused Iran of trying to hack both Trump and the Biden-Harris campaigns last month, Wednesday's actions are a reminder that U.S. officials continue to see Russia as a prominent foreign influence threat to November's election. Sources familiar with the matter have told CNN ahead of these announcements. Ah, yes, as we see, the greatest threat to American politics, the infiltration of other nations into that of the American political zeitgeist. Of course, as we know, the only real threat there could possibly be the greatest threat to American. Wednesday's actions are a reminder that U.S. officials continue to see Russia as a prominent foreign influence threat to November's election. Sources familiar with the matter have told CNN ahead of these announcements. Ah, yes, as we see, the greatest threat to American politics, the infiltration of other nations into that of the American political zeitgeist. Of course, as we...
Is that a bad thing? Do you not believe that's true, or do you think that it's an okay thing?
know, the only real threat there could possibly be countries like Russia, Iran, China. You know, countries that the U.S. empire most certainly would be completely happy to go to war with over certain things. And of course, when I say...
They're aggressing on us right now. They're aggressing on us right now. It's provable that they're hacking into Donald Trump's... Iran is hacking into Donald Trump's campaign. The Russians are trying to hack into Harris's, and they're paying off people. China is also doing cyber attacks on the United States on a near I don't know if it's a daily basis, but I know at least every month there's at least one story of something happening. I think that 1 million computers in all these different academic institutions got confiscated by the United States government because they were bought from China, and they were installed with a bot network so that they could spy on American academic research. Yeah, they are doing this, and it's provable, and it's happening, and that's a bad thing, and we should try and stop it, and we should be as adversarial to those who are adversarial against us towards them.
No, countries that the U.S. empire most certainly would be completely happy to go to war with over certain things. And of course, when I say happy to go to war with, I mean happy to sacrifice you and your loved ones upon the chess.
They are with our country, you slimy... I can't deal with these people. Well, they might be hacking into our stuff, but they might be trying to draw us into a war. And the American empire, we're so evil. I'm sorry, are we fucking with their elections, or are they with our elections. They're hacking into our shit. They're lying to like you. Like, I don't know what the is wrong with this guy. The U.S. actually doesn't. They've been hacking into our shit for a long time. Yeah, we're probably engaging in some sort of cyber warfare towards them, but we just watched a video where they're aggressing on everybody in the South China Sea, ramming into their boats and trying to start World War III, and nobody's mad at them about that, but we try to retaliate for the stuff that they're doing to us, and we're the bad guys? We're the bad guys? China is with the Philippines, they're with Vietnam, they're with Japan, they're with Taiwan, and we're saying, hey, you need to stop that. They hack us, we've hacked them back. Fuck them. The U.S. is with everyone's elections. There's like no, you say that, but then like there's no proof. If we were with everyone's elections in a way that mattered, number one, they'd post any proof of it. They would come out and say, hey, America's with our elections, and then they would show proof of it. But you know what? They haven't done it. Do you think actors just act out of a hatred for America? No, they're trying to build up their power. Crad babes, I don't know what the you think, who the you think you're talking to. I do look at the news better. Russia and China are trying to upgrade their position in the world stage. Of course, they're going to try and with us. We're going to with them back because they're with us. They're not doing this in a free trade sense. They're not doing this in a competitive sense. They're doing this in we're going to underhandedly try to invade different countries. We're going to underhandedly try to, like, plausible deniability, use our civilian boats as like military vessels to ram into all sorts of civilian and military vessels from the Philippines and Vietnam and Taiwan and Japan. And then we're going to be like, oh, well, if you attack our civilian ships, then we're going to go to war with you. Better not do anything about it. But like, what the is wrong with you? Why would you think, like, the United States, everything that we do is like 99.99% out in the open? Okay, that's the reality of it. Of course, the U.S. is going to do some clandestine shit, like no shit. We do have the CIA, but the CIA is no more competent than MI6 or any more competent than like the German intelligence agency. Like, we just have a lot more money to look at different things. We have a lot of intelligence, but we're not engaging in the same kind of regime change shit, or we're not going out and attacking random civilian ships like China is, and we're not invading people for acquisition of land like Russia is. No, it's not stuff. I do have skepticism because I used to believe that the U.S. was doing all this stuff too. But then I learned a little bit about our foreign policy, and I learned a little bit about our intelligence agencies. And we neither have the capability to do like color revolutions or anything. That's not something that we engage in. We don't have the support of the political branches of our country, nor the people to do any of the crazy wacko shit that we used to do in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, kind of petered out during the 80s, basically stopped during the 90s. Like, we don't have the same type of foreign policy. Like, the United States has done up things in the past, but just because they've done things in the past doesn't mean that they're doing up things now. And if they are trying to do that, then, or if they are doing that, then show me something that the United States is doing that is on par with what Russia is doing, that is on par with what China is doing, on par with what Iran is doing. What the no. Color revolutions literally don't exist. It's not even real. The best example is Guatemala, and we tried to like do a color revolution there, and we lost 3 times. The rebels got beaten back 3 times, and then we were about to fund them again, and Guatemala just capitulated because they were scared that America was going to invade. It wasn't actually a color revolution. People don't operate just like drones where you put a piece of propaganda in front of them and they instantly believe it. People can generally tell, unless you're a conservative like this person or an anti-establishment crazy like lefty, like it's a real term. I know what a color revolution. I know it's a real term. It just doesn't bear out in reality.
sport of war, and then watch you be castigated into the dustbin of history for people to forget your name and you to never to create the progeny and lovely life that you could possibly provide for the family that you could have in the future because you were sacrificed on the field of war. Exactly. Absolutely and utterly
If you don't want us to go to war, maybe you should, I don't know, be really mad at, Iran and Russia and China for constantly with us and trying to like with our elections, trying to with the impression that people have about the reality that is in front of us. Yes, do you not think the government agencies think of how psychology works and how people engage with information? Of course they do. But we've never done a successful color revolution. We used to try, but they just didn't work. Where a color revolution is where you start off by, like color revolutions are essentially the same thing as culture, like the cultural Bolshevism, like cultural Marxism. What's the thing that they say? I can't remember, like cultural Marxism conspiracies where like, oh, they start subverting the masses and they start trying to convince them that their country is bad and that aligning with America is good. And then over time, the degenerate art comes out and the protests start. And then the CIA makes sure that those peaceful protests will become violent protests. And then they'll overthrow the governments and then the U.S. will install a friendly government. I'm not reading the Wikipedia article on color revolution right now. I'm going to finish this video and then we're probably done with stream. But if Crab Babes or if Internet Gas for that matter wants to argue with me about color revolutions next stream, like feel free.
Despicable. But what we need to realize is, as they consistently tell you, that the threat of all of these nations is their involvement in American politics and the possibility of them breaking out into a wider conflict on the world stage. Well, what you would need to realize is that the biggest influence within American politics that is that of a foreign nation, it's not Russia, it's not China, it's Iran. My friends, it's Israel. Here we see how pro-Israel AIPAC influence.
So, like the proven Russian interference into our Jesus Christ, that was crazy. We're gonna kill this guy immediately. 1 second. Get killed. Get killed, Sabrina. Get loser. Let me out. Let me out. Let me out. There we go. Besides, it's based on the series of color revolutions, so-called because they were named after colors, that occurred across Europe in the 90s and aughts that installed Western-friendly governments and engaged in major systematic lawfare operations to completely remold Europe's political scene and eradicate any influence of the left. Okay, maybe after the fall of the Soviet Union, all of these countries were really pissed that they were under the thumb of an authoritarian, like Soviet country, and they overthrew those governments. No? Maybe people just really hate living under communism, actually. Believe it or not, communism led to a lot of pain for a lot of people. And the sooner that people, the sooner that people start recognizing that Soviet-style communism, socialism, any attempt at this has led to like great suffering for the population, maybe then you could understand the psychology. Like you can say, oh, the government doesn't understand the psychology of the people. Of course they do. And obviously you don't, because the suffering that, I mean, I was just in Prague and I went to the communism museum there and there's not a rosy picture. They did not have a good time under communism. They were brutally repressed. It's no wonder that all of these Eastern European countries overthrew the governments that they were under. The propaganda museum, bro, that's so cringe, man. Like the people themselves, like walking around in Prague, you can see anti-Soviet propaganda. They don't like communism. They don't like it. No, that's not what they said in there at all. They talked about all the people that were murdered, the people that tried to flee the Soviets and then were like gunned down while they hung from electric fences. That was the Iron Curtain. Like the noose, the way that they publicly executed people was one of the most brutal and disgusting things I've ever seen in my entire life. Here, let me pull up a photo of this absolutely horrid way to die. Where is it? Where's my pictures from the Communism Museum? Here we are. We'll turn the brightness all the way up. And we'll go to full screen here. And then let me open up OBS so I can make sure I'm showing you guys the full thing here. Ah, damn it. I have to fix the focus. My leg. Wait, hold on. No, I don't. Oh, you can't really see it. But it's basically, it's a propaganda museum. Is there any like anti-Soviet, anti-communist, information out there from the people that lived in the Soviet Union that is negative towards the Soviets, that is not just propaganda to you? Or are you just like actually sold on the idea that everybody that lived under the Soviets were super happy with Soviet rule? Do you think that one could take an American crimes museum? Would you think showing pictures of the torture in Abu Ghraib, Guantanamo? What happens in Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo is not going to be the average lived experience of the people that live in the United States. So no. However, if someone was to like make a museum that like dishonestly reflected what happened under like the US, like I guess like you could say like, oh, everyone is super poor and nobody can afford to eat or anything like that. But like, man, the Soviets, they built a giant statue, spent hundreds of billions of dollars on this statue. Okay? This thing was unbelievably goddamn big. And you know what they called it? They called it the line for meat. It was nicknamed that. The line for meat, because no one had any food. And then, after Stalin died, they blew it the up. Don't rely on over-exaggerated misrepresentations. Well, the idea that you would bring up Abu Ghraib and Guantanamo Bay as examples of American crimes, when this isn't a Soviet crime museum, it was a history of the Soviet Union leading into the Czech Republic. No, was it hundreds of billions in today's dollars, yes. Hundreds of billions of dollars, or I'm sorry, did I say billions? I'm sorry, millions. A small group supported with, no. The government of the Czech Republic did after Stalin died and Khrushchev came into power. They only showed the bad bits? No, they didn't. They had little not dioramas. What's they had like a living, or like a display, like what a little Soviet supermarket looked like, what a Soviet schoolroom looked like. Like, what the is wrong with you? Like, it wasn't like 100% bad, but the things that happened under Soviet rule. Yes, the government installed in the Color Revolution. No, this was destroyed in 1950-something, dude. No. We're derailed now. This was destroyed in the 50s, immediately after Stalin died. The Khrushchev regime was like, hey, you know what? There's a cult of personality around this guy, and a lot of people really hate him. And if I want people to trust me, then I'm going to say like, hey, we're going to admit to some of the crimes that Stalin did, and he's kind of a piece of shit, guys, by the way, LOL. And then like, within 2 years of Stalin dying, they blew it the up. Do you think that the Khrushchev regime was installed by the West? And yes, it was hundreds of millions of dollars adjusted for inflation in today's dollars. This was a giant, solid granite thing. The line for meat. Go to the Wikipedia page. History. As ordered by the Soviet Union, it was taken down with 800 kilograms of explosives. Oh, I'm sorry. It was 1962 that it was demolished. It was finished in 1955. Are you going to say that the Soviet Union in 1962 was a color revolution government? Or are you going to walk that back and say, oh, I'm sorry, Sansol. It actually seems like maybe you do know a little bit about history, and maybe you have actually like given a single iota of a to read about anything that you talk about. Jesus Christ.
This is U.S. politics. We have talked about this quite some time here. If you are curious, go ahead, watch numerous videos that I have on topics such as this. Nonetheless, we move on. Here we see from Politico, progressives face an existential threat from AIPAC, and there's nothing to stop it. AIPAC and other pro-Israel groups spent a combined, wait for it, $25 million on ads to defeat Reps Jamal Bowman and Cori Bush this summer. Liberals worry they're just getting started. Isn't that just something? So not only do we see AIPAC funding mainline establishment Democrats, giving people like Joe Biden, Kamala Harris.
AIPAC is not a foreign run. Oh, wait, hold on. Did I just accidentally make, how did I don't even know what I just hit that full screened it. 1 second. What is the, well, I guess I'm never going to know what the shortcut for make it full screen is. I guess Crowd Babes is gone. After I just like showed that I was correct. Why would they do this? I could never imagine why post-Soviet states might not like the Soviet Union, might not like Soviet monuments in their country. Oh man, it's just such a mystery. I can't imagine. I can't imagine.
Nancy Pelosi, and anyone who will toe the line of the regime, limitless funding for their campaigns, but we can see people who are willing to step outside of the spectrum of allowable opinion in one small way just by standing up to the regime and saying, no, I don't believe it's right that these little brown kids are being bombed in Palestine with my tax dollars at the behest of Israel's actions. Well, then you're going to be removed from politics. And it doesn't matter if you're someone who actually espouses the standards of being America first, like Thomas Massey, and actually caring about the fact that we end the foreign adventurism that is causing us to be $35 trillion in debt. You will be attacked endlessly by institutions like AIPAC. So as we see, it doesn't matter if you are the left or the right, AIPAC will go for your neck no matter what. Here we now see from Politico,
they're not a foreign actor
or Republican meddling. AIPAC is the biggest source of GOP donations in Dem primaries. AIPAC sees support for Israel as bipartisan, and its donors come from both parties, but its practice of sending money from GOP donors into Democratic races has enraged progressives. And yes, this would happen in vice versa as well, because as you know, this is the nature of the political game. It's all about making sure that your side can come out on top. And the games that are being played here are quite nefarious, to say the least. Here we see from the New York Times, Israel secretly targets U.S. lawmakers with influence campaign on Gaza war. I'm going to reread that real quick, because they keep telling you that Russia and China and Iran are the big threat to be secretly involved in American...
And if Israel is doing that, that's bad. And if someone was taking money from Israel as a foreign agent and didn't register with FARA, they should be prosecuted. I'm comfortable with saying that.
Politics swaying the nature of what's going on behind the scenes. But here you see from the New York Times, Israel secretly targets U.S. lawmakers with influence campaign on the Gaza war. Israel's Ministry of Diaspora Affairs ordered the operation, which used fake social media accounts urging U.S. lawmakers to fund Israel's military, according to officials and documents about the effort. This is not a joke. This is real. But of course, as we know, Russia, China, and Iran are the biggest factor for influence in American politics. Here we see from Politico, Israel targeted more than 120 U.S. lawmakers in a disinformation campaign. The lawmakers were mostly Democrats, and the campaign involved pro-Israeli military posts on their accounts over the past year. So once again, we see propaganda being rolled out en masse. Isn't that just something? Jumping on now to this. Here we see the inside story of America's most powerful and divisive pro-Israel law.
That's true too. Congress is old and old people are already pro-Israel. That's kind of true, yeah.
Lobby. The American is...
But we should just ignore all the foreign adversaries trying to do stuff because, you know, Israel's doing something bad too. Jesus, man. After this video, I'm probably done, by the way.
Israeli Public Affairs Committee has clashed with the closeted target and championed U.S. presidential and politicians, turning Israel into an increasingly partisan issue. Here's what you need to know about AIPAC, the revered, feared, reviled lobbying and political fundraising group poised to play an oversized role in the 2024 elections. That's right, an oversized role in the 2024 elections, as they...
This is a pro-Israel lobby, but it's not a foreign agent. So, like, why would I care? I don't want adversaries of the United States, or really any other government in the entire world, to be running my country. But people in my country can advocate for whatever they want. But if you're being paid by a foreign national to spread misinformation in my country, that's where the problem is.
They have been doing for oh so long, but what we know is that AIPAC has been spending buku bucks to the tune of up to $100 million, more than they've ever spent in any election cycle ever. But of course, as we see with what's kicking off with the narrative surrounding Israel and people starting to consistently shift the dynamic of how they are actually perceiving this nation and their actions, we can see that you would actually have to throw more money into that landscape. Jumping on now, here we see AIPAC plan to spend $100 million on elections this year, and it already surpassed that. AIPAC money has already helped pro-Israel Democrats defeat two of the most vocal opponents of Israel's war on Gaza, and that being Cori Bush and
it was officially like confirmed even by our own State Department to be hacked by the Iranians. Like someone sent in a phishing attack and someone clicked on a link that they weren't supposed to in the Trump campaign, which isn't good. I'm not going to say it's good. I don't even think that it's funny. I think it's really scary that people are so tech illiterate that they would click on random links that somebody sent them in their email that would give them access to an entire political campaign. Like, that's scary. That's terrifying. It's not good. It's not funny. It's just bad.